Begin the current Daf, Mesechtas Bava Metzia Daf Chaf. Begin 10 lines down at the top of the Yamid. But the Gemara continues the halacha, the next Mishnah, again continuing the theme of the obviously these parakim, but also of the previous Mishnah is not just finding things, but specifically we were talking about different types of documents. Wanted to know what the halacha is when you find. We spoke about of shtari chayv, of loan documents, and we spoke about then the Gittin and Shechur Avadim. And now the Mishnah discusses different types of documents and what the halacha is if you're going to return it to the one that would be the one who needs that document, and different types of cases when you would and when you wouldn't. Should correspond by Kazakh and Cheskel turn to Daf Chaim, should turn to today's Daf, should be schos v'chein when they saw that throughout the entire world. So we're discussing today's Daf Ar Chafisa It Luskema. If you find something in a certain type of a container, when you have these documents, if that would say that you return it or not. Different ways of actually containing, putting together different types of documents. A tachrich, either in rolling them up, or a gudda, or in a bundle. Question is if kesher siman is a not a siman. Derame adodi, that if you have, let's say, one document laying on top of another one. What happens if you find three documents? So who do you return it to? So it actually might depend. If it's one borrower from three lenders, then you'll return it to the borrower. If it's three borrowers from one lender, then you'll return it to the lender. You presume that it fell from the person who all the three are related to him. Halach of simfain, which is it's a receipt. It's like actually Taisa says it's when it's like the lender has it versus the term shaver. Motza ben shterei. So what happens if a lender finds it amongst his own documents? Motza b'yad malva. That's the question about what does that tell us regarding the validity of the document that the simfon is on. So begin the current Daf Chav, 10 lines down at the top of the Yamid. We continue with the theme of the next Mishnah of different types of documents that are found. So someone's walking the street and Motza Igrei Shum. He finds a letter of evaluation. What is that? So that's where the courts evaluate the properties of a borrower for the lender, where the lender wants to collect from the borrower. The borrower says, Enli. Says, Enli, okay, we'll find some of your assets. And the court writes a letter that evaluating how much he could collect. So if, let's say, they find the document recording Bezin's evaluation of a property for seizure, or the Igre's Mazin, which is if someone accepted upon himself to feed his stepdaughter, and he got married, his wife already had a daughter from somewhere else. So there's a letter documenting the husband's commitment to support this daughter. Or if, let's say, someone finds shtar chalitza, which is a documenting that there was a chalitza done to the sister-in-law after her husband died without any children. Or me'unin, which is if you have a minor that's an orphan that her mother or her brothers got her married with her consent, she could leave the marriage with what's called mi'un, just refusal. She doesn't need a get. She could just say in front of three people, I don't want this man my husband. The court writes her a document of mi'un in front of them. That should be testimony that she's permitted to marry now whoever she wants to. Or b'shtari birurin, which the Gemara is going to explain what are these documents of selection. Or b'chol ma'aseh be'ezin, or any court document, which these are all court documents. It's not a regular individual's documents. If someone finds this harei yachzer, so he can return it to the one who would require this document, because we don't have to be concerned, as we had said on previous dafim regarding, let's say, shtar chayiv, or one of these other documents, like get shem and nimlach, maybe he changed his mind, never did it. No, because the court doesn't write it only when it's authenticated. So that we know that it's a done deal. And what's with the other concern we had? Oh, maybe it was paroi, maybe it was already paid up, it's already in the hand of the borrower, it doesn't belong to the lender. No, these documents, there is no paroi. As the Gemara said, there's no paying up a chalitza, there's no paying up any one of these things. Now, even according to the one who holds that actually, let's say the first case of Igrei Shum, letters of seizure, that is what's called Shuma Hadar, that actually could be the guy will get back his field and he'll give him back. So that, says Rashi, even if there is such a thing that you could pay back for the Shum, but the guy himself caused a loss to himself, he should have torn up that document, and by not tearing it up, we're going to give it to the collector back again. So therefore, we're not concerned of Shema, that Chashin Le'Parayin. So there's no concerns over here, so we give it back to the one who needs the document. Now, continues the Mishnah, related, because we're talking about documents. So what happens if Motza B'Chafisa? Someone finds this document in a chafiso evet luskama, which we're going to explain what chafisa and luskama is, but there are certain types of containers. So you find any document in this container, or let's say you find tachrich shel shtaris. Tachrich is like from the word kerch, of a roll. You find a roll of documents. Oy agudah shel shtaris. Or you find a bundle of documents. Gemara can explain, like we said, what's chafisa, what's luskama, what's tachrich, what's agudah. So either one of these cases, halacha is ariza yachzer. He'll return the documents because, as the Gemara is going to explain, these are things that have a siman. Why? Because the kli, the vessel, is a siman. When the owner is going to say, well, you found it in such and such type of a container. And so to tachrich and agudah, when it's a roll or a bundle, you'll return it because that's also something that has a siman. Again, as the Gemara will explain on Amid Beis, what exactly is the siman of these cases. Now, says the Mishnah to qualify v'kama agudah shel shtaris, what's considered a bundle of documents? That's shleisha keshurin zeh b'zeh. That's when you have three, and we'll explain in detail in the Gemara, three that's tied to each other, and that's what an agudah is, shtaris. Now, Shloimy, he says that echad haleiva mishleisha. You have one person borrowing from three, meaning if there were three documents of one borrower, which he borrowed from three different lenders. When you find these three documents, yachze, you return them if you find them, l'loiva, to the borrower, because most definitely he paid them up, and it was returned to him, and it fell from him. Because if it fell from the lenders, who would have gathered all the lenders' documents into one place? Must have fell from the borrower. Now, what happens if shleisha halavim in echad? Let's say what you found was actually three documents of the same lender with three different borrowers. Then yachse, then the one who finds it returns it lamalva to the lender, because obviously it fell from him, and that's why it's all from the same lender, albeit from three different borrowers. Another case, says the Mishnah, if someone finds a document in his possession amongst his other documents, now he doesn't know what's it doing by him, meaning he doesn't know, did the borrower deposit by him? Did the lender deposit by him? Or maybe because some of it was paid up, so they wanted a third party to hold on to it, because neither one really should be having it, because the lender's not owed the money, the borrower did not pay up all the money. He forgot. He doesn't know what he's doing with it. So it says the Mishnah, Yehi Munach, the document should remain in his hand, meaning he should not give it back, not to the lender, not to the borrower, until the Yom comes, because it's not clear what the document was doing by him. Moreover, says the Mishnah, Im yeshi moim simphonios, which Rashi explains, this is not the same case. This is a different halacha. This is talking about if someone finds amongst his documents a shiur, which is a receipt that was written on one of his own documents that says that it was paid up. The halacha is yasa ma shebe simphonios. He should do as it is in the receipt, meaning the document is presumed to have been paid up. Now, although the receipt should have been by the borrower, what's it doing by the lender himself? We say that the borrower trusted him. It says, oh, don't worry, you can give it to me tomorrow. Tomorrow never materializes, and therefore he still has it by him. And therefore, but if the symphony is there by him, then he has to do like that and presume that it was paid up. So first the Gemara makes a clarification. One of the cases of the Mishnah that we mentioned, which we said is one of the Maisei Bezdin, that you're going to go ahead and return it to the owner, was Shtari Berurin. Says the Gemara, my Shtari Berurin, what are these documents of verification? So Hacha Tergemu in Bavel, we translated, is Shtari Tanasa. These documents recording a claim in Bezdin. That's what each one is mevar his claim. So therefore it's called Shtari Berurin. But Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar, he says that it means when they select judges. So they write for them, Zeh bar lo echad, he's selecting one judge, Zeh bar lo echad, and he's selecting another judge, that neither one of them could back out on. And then together those two, they pick a third judge. But this is what's known in halacha as zabla. And zabla is when people are going to court, they say, well, I don't want that person, I don't want that person. It says, okay, you pick one, I pick one, and then they'll pick the third one. So that's berurin, where they're selecting, they're choosing these litigants who should be the best. And so Again, it's a Maisa Bezin, so there's no concern. The court's already verified this, and there's no Piroin over here. So therefore, it's one of the cases that we said that you'll return it to its rightful party. And as the Mishnah said, as the Gemara quotes, V'chol Maisa Bezin, all court documents, you return to the owner. So the Gemara brings a story, which we already mentioned this on Daf Yomi. Hahu Gita. There was a get, the Ishtakach Beidina de Ravuna, that was found in the court of Ravuna, and as Rashi tells us, it was verified with a hempik, which is that the court already certifies this document, and the shliach who was bringing it said, "It fell from me." Now, it said on this document, "B'shviri Masa Dalrachis Nahara." It's from the town Shviri, that's on the river Rachis, and he was saying, "Hey, this is my get." So Ravuna says, "You continue to Tamid Beis that Chashin l'shnei Shviri." We are concerned for two Shviri, meaning even though the Shviri that we know of, there's no two Yosef ben Shimon's, but maybe there's another Shviri that has another Yosef ben Shimon, and that's where it was written, and maybe it fell from a different shliach, so we can't give it back to you. So that's what we're putting the pasuk. Rav Chizda said to Rabba, "Puk ayin, go out, look into this shayla, because the urta in the evening, boila Rav Huna is going to ask you this question." Nafik, he went out, Daki checked, but Ashkach, and he found that none. That's halacha of our Mishnah we just quoted. Our Mishnah we just quoted says, Kol Maisa Bezin, all court documents that is a yachzer, you return it, because since it was not established that there's two Yosef ben Shimons in one city, for another city that's not known to us, we're not concerned, and therefore he said, Rabbah, not like Ravuna.
You say we're not concerned, we're going to see if there's not.
We're not, because we're not concerned for another town with the same name with another person, and that's why the Mishnah is telling us, "Kol Maisa Bezin is a yachzer." So you see that even though a Maisa Bezin is in Bezin itself, which is like, okay, this is what we discussed in the other daf, 2 dafim ago, shiur Metzuyos, but be that as it may, Rabbi is saying that you have a Maisa Bezin, you are going to return it, not like Rav Huna who says, no, you're not going to return it because you have to be chayish. So Rav Am said to Rabbi, wait a second. How are you answering the question of Isura? Right? We're talking about this was a get. A get is prohibitory law. It's talking regarding Ashes Ish. How are you resolving your question that we have over here? Mimamaina. You're taking our Mishnah, which is talking about monetary law. We're talking about Metzias. We're talking about who has the rights to monies, these types of documents, and you're proving to Isser, which Tais actually on the top of the Amud actually has a good, interesting question. He says, what do you mean? Why wouldn't we learn out a leniency of Mammon that we're not concerned when we have a Maisa Bezin, we return it to Isser, to get? We're actually more stringent in monetary law because by Mammon we don't go Acharayv. We don't go based on laws of majority. By Isser we go based on Rayv. That even when there's a Cheskes Isser, the Neged Rayv, and we're not concerned, let's say, when you're shechting an animal, maybe there was a hole where you shechted, and maybe we have to be concerned. So even though there's a cheskes iser, we have a rive that says no, that there's not usually a hole where we shechted. But by mammon we don't go acharav. So why would you say that we can't learn out from mammon? So it says, yeah, but by Ashes Ish they were more machmer. As we find, let's say, if a man drowns in waters that you can't see the edges, the woman's not allowed to initially get married, even though most people in such a situation would die. So therefore, that's the question that Rav Am is asking Rabbi. He says, how are you learning how to get for Ashes Ish? From Mammon? Maybe my Mammon would make cool that we're not Chosher, but by get maybe would be Machmer. So Malay, so Rabbi responded to Rav Amram, Troda, which it seems to translate as Meshugana, like, you're deranged. Because Shtar Chalitza Mi'unantanan. Read our Mishnah. Our Mishnah wasn't only regarding money documents, it was regarding Isser too. Chalitza, Mi'un. These are things regarding Ashes Ish. These are regarding marital relationships. And therefore, don't ask me how am I comparing from the Mishnah when the Mishnah is also talking about Isser. So what happened was Paka Arza de Beirav, the pillar that the base medrash stood on, that it was supported, the supporting beam broke. So each one was saying that it was for his umbrage. Mar Amar Rav Amram said, yeah, Mishum Lasoi Didi Paka. You know why the pillar broke? Because of my mazel. Because they were taking revenge because of how Rabbah spoke to me. That's why it broke. Mar Amar Rabbah said, no, Mishum Lasoi Didi Paka. It's because the way he answered me to embarrass me in the Beis Medrash, asked me such a shayla, like, how could you say such a thing? He's screaming in the middle of the shir and asking, like, what are you talking about? So each one was finding a source that why it broke was because of his covet. Now, it says the Mishnah, we said, the next case the Mishnah spoke about was Matzah b'chafisa abit luskimo. If these documents were found, if the document was found in the chafisa luskimo, okay, now you return it because of the siman of the container. So the Gemara just wants to clarify, what are these containers? My chafisa, Amar Rabbi Bar Bechana says chemis kitana. It's a small flask of leather that generally they put wine inside of it. If you find the document in there, again, you return it because of the siman that there is. Says the Gemara, Ma'it luskama. So Amar Rabbi Shmuel is tlika desabe. It's this container that the older people put their things that they need, that they shouldn't have to look for them, that they have these little containers and boxes, glasses, pills, all the different things that they have. They need to find things, so they have these different containers, which Tais actually wonders, is that really a siman, these containers? So he says, he discusses that regarding it, but akaponim, that's the container. If you find the document, so then you'll have to return it. So the Mishnah said another case of tachar shoshtaris. If you have a roll of documents, or a aguda shoshtaris, or a bundle of documents, so b'chulu etc. So then you're going to have to return it. So the Gemara brings a brayso that elaborates on this. How much is a roll of documents? So it's shloisha kuruchin zeh b'zeh. It's three that are rolled one in the other. Meaning that's the siman that the Bailam give on it. Because the guy who finds it announces, I found documents. Now, this guy says, they're mine. There were three of them. They were rolled in one in the other. So when you find rolled documents, that's what you're going to announce. You're going to announce that you found documents, and he'll say there were three and they were rolled. Now, how much is a bundle of documents? So that's shleisha kashun and zebazeh. That's three that's tied one in the other. Says the Gemara, shamet mina. You could infer from this that kesher is a siman, that a knot is a siman because there are certain knots that are not similar to other knots. And he's going to say the knot was made like this. Because if you don't say that, then what siman is there over here in the case of the aguda, which is knotted one in the other? So you should resolve from here that in general a kesher, a knot is a siman, which that's asked in general if it is or not. Now the Gemara says no. From here you can't prove it because a ton of b'chir taught a brayso we're talking about shloisha kuruchin zeh b'zeh. You know what an aguda is? Aguda is three documents rolled one in the other. Rolling is a siman, but not necessarily a knot. Now, according to everyone, meaning that in general that people roll every document on its own, and then they tie it together. Here, he rolled all three together. So the Gemara says, so then isn't that the same thing as the case of Tachar? So on that says the Gemara, no, the difference, and this is what the picture is to show the difference between those two different cases, because they're both rolling. But Tachar, when you're rolling, is kol chad b'chad b'rosh dechavre. Each one, you're rolling by the edge of the other one. And that's how you're rolling it up. Aguda is derama ahadadi. What you're doing is you're first putting all three on top of each other, the length on the length of the other one, and then the kruchas, and then you're rolling it. That's a different way of rolling it. That's the case of aguda. So now the Gemara asks that the one who finds these documents, my machers, what is he calling out? Says the Gemara, minyan. He's calling out the number. He says, I found three documents. This guy comes along and gives a siman how they're rolled together. So it says the Gemara, my irit lasa. Why does he have to call out three? I feel a train nami. Then even two. Since you're telling me that the owner only has to give a siman of how it's rolled, so why is it specifically when you find three? It should even be two, because you don't have to say any number. So it says the Gemara, no, Elikudam Ravina. You're right. It's like Ravina says in El Metzias, the next paragraph of Chafayim and Aleph, Tiva Machers. He says, no, you only call out the coin. Hachanami Shtori Machers. You're right. The guy who announces doesn't say the number. All he says is, I found documents. And this guy has to say two things. It was this amount of documents, and they were rolled. And he says how they were rolled. So therefore, it's specifically three. Why? Because by two, everyone knows. Because since he's saying I found documents with an S, so everyone knows that there were two. So that number wouldn't be a siman, but it's only when it's three and more, then he says the number, and he says out of his roll. Now, we had another halach in the Mishnah. He says, if it's one borrower from three lenders, you give it back to the borrower. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. If you would think to say that these documents were from the lenders, my boy Gavadadi, why all three documents together? Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Maybe they went to do kiyum to certify it. It's like Rashi explains, by the cipher of the judges who writes the henpick, which is what certifies all the documents, and maybe that's why they were all together, because they were all coming to the cipher. The lenders were in the same place because they were coming to certify it. It says Gemara, no, the Mekaimi. They were certified already. So it says, okay, but maybe they fell from the scribe himself who was holding all three documents. It says the Gemara, a person does not leave his document that's going to be certified in the hand of the scribe. He does it, comes to the stempel, and he gives it right back to you. It doesn't make sense that it would be by that cipher that he would have had all three and then dropped it, and therefore we're presuming that it's from the borrower. Same thing is in the other case. Shloisha shalava me'echad. If you have three borrowers from the same lender, he said you give it back to the lender, etc. So the Gemara explains this. If you would think to say that it's from the borrowers, but that means that they paid it up and it was already given back to them, why are all three borrowers' documents in the same place? Says, what do you mean? Maybe they went to have it written and it fell from the scribe, and maybe they never borrowed in the first place. There's a gross gvir that does the loans, and these three borrowers were there getting it written by the cipher, and that's where it fell from. Says the Gemara, no, it's written by three different scribes. So you can't say that they had all gone to the same cipher and that's where it fell from, and because it was three different cipher. Says the Gemara, but maybe they went to the same cipher of the Dayanim because they wanted it certified, but still it was from them. Says the Gemara, no, Malva Mekayim Shtari. Only a lender certifies his documents. Loiva Mekayim Shtari. A loiva is not going to certify. That's only what a lender would do to make sure that he could collect from it, and therefore that's why we give it back to the lender. Now, another case the Mishnah spoke about was, we said that if a guy finds a document amongst his documents, that was one case. That was really a third party. Then we said if the guy himself, if the lender, if there is a receipt in his possession, we should say he should do what he has from the receipts. Now, relating back to this halacha, the Gemara introduces the following halacha. He says, simfain, which is a receipt that breaks the document. Because, like Rashi explained, anything that nullifies something is called simfain. As we find regarding being mekadesh isha or selling of a slave, the blemish is called a simfain. Well, how does that have to do the same thing like a shiur? Because it nullifies the sale. Here also we're talking about a receipt nullifies the document.
Also,
What?
I don't understand. Is it a star? Is it Aegis?
What? Simfon is a receipt. It's a receipt. It's a documented. Yeah, that like what a receipt works for any loan. Like it says that it was paid up. So it's just a document of a receipt. So if you have such a receipt, hayoytzi mitachas yidei malva, that is in the possession of the lender himself. It's not by the borrower. Yeah, right. Generally, it's the borrower has the receipt. The lender has the receipt. So even though it's written in the lender's own handwriting, it's like he's just was making a joke, and it's going to be invalid. So as the Gemara explains, I don't have to tell you that if it was written by a scribe, you could say, yeah, Safra Isramile. The guy happened to see a scribe, and he thought, look, if my creditor is going, my debtor is going to come to pay me, and I'm not going to have the receipt ready, he's not going to pay me. So let me have the receipt ready. So he saw a scribe. He says, write for me a receipt. Because of, and he writes it. So that's not a chiddush that he has a receipt by him. That doesn't mean anything because he has it just in case. The chiddush is no, elafilu kasav b'ksav yadai. Even if he wrote it with his own handwriting, which that you could say, wait a second, if it wasn't paid up, why would he go quickly and write before it was paid up, since he knows how to write? So that would seem to indicate that it was paid up already. No. Still possible it's going to be invalid. Somebody thinks, Dilma Misrami might happen, but Asi ben Ashmash is going to come to me Friday afternoon, the Kaparli is going to want to pay me. If I don't give him right away receipt, he's not going to give me the money. So I'll write it. When he gives me the money, I'll give it to him. So therefore, says Rav, the fact that you have your own receipt of your own document in your possession doesn't mean that it was paid up, even if you wrote it with your own handwriting. Now, on that says the Gemara, Tanan. That seems to be difficult from the halacha of our Mishnah. Im Yeshiman Semfainis, our Mishnah said clearly that if, as Rashi tells us, our Mishnah is talking about the lender, because it's saying if a guy finds amongst his documents and he finds that there has a receipt, he should do as it's written in that receipt, meaning that the receipt will tell us that it's been paid up already. So you see that it is kosher, the simfon. So why are you saying that it's puzzle? Says the Gemara, Kid Amar Rav Safra, like Rav Safra, as we're going to quote him later on, that he says, Shenimtza bein shtadis kru, and that it was found amongst the torn documents. Achanami, he wrote, says, Tomad Shematzai, where he found the document that the receipt was regarding, he found it bein shtadis kru, and they found it amongst his ripped up documents. And it wasn't torn. Now that's why you rely on the shoiver, because the place of the document proves that the receipt is true. Because if that document was not paid up, he would not have put that document by the ripped up documents. That's one interpretation Rashi says. Rashi says he heard that interpretation. He likes a different shot. He says, no, you found the receipt, not the document. You found the receipt amongst the torn up documents. So therefore you could say that it must have been that you received the debt, you were paid up already, and this receipt the lender doesn't need, only the borrower needs. But the borrower forgot it by the lender. So therefore the lender put it with the documents that he doesn't need anymore. Because if you would think to say that the lender wrote it to be prepared so that when the borrower pays up, he could give it to him, he wouldn't have put it with his documents that he doesn't need. He needs it to be ready to give it to him when he's going to pay it up. So the fact that he found the receipt by his shredded documents, that tells us, so again, two pshatim, either he found the document by the shredded, or he found the receipt by the shredded, but either way, that's going to show, but in general, no, the fact that he has it doesn't say anything. He has it just in case the guy's going to pay it up. So that is what answers the contradiction between Rav's teaching and the halacha of our Mishnah. The Gemara says, Tashma, the Gemara tries to bring another raya from a Mishnah in Bava Metzia Daf Kofayin Beis and Aleph. If there's two Yosef ben Shimons in one city, so it says the Mishnah, Nimtza le'echad. If let's say one guy finds a receipt, bein shtareisav, amongst his documents, which is written on it, Shtarei shel Yosef ben Shimon, the document of Yosef ben Shimon that's in my possession, Perua is paid up. Now, this guy actually had two documents on the two Yosef ben Shimons. He gave a loan to the two Yosef ben Shimons in this town. But he found one receipt that said Yosef ben Shimon paid up already. So the halacha is, Shtarei shneim Peruan. Both of their documents are considered paid up. Why? Because each one could say, it was my document that the receipt was written for. Now actually, Rashi brings that the Gemara Bava Basra asks, he says, what do you mean, even without a receipt? The Mishnah teaches us that no one person could collect with a loan document on any Yosef ben Shimon, because each Yosef ben Shimon could say, I'm the other one. So what do you have to say because of the receipt? You can't collect anyway. On that, the Gemara there explains, we're talking about where in the shtar, in the loan document, it says, the Zaydis, says 3 generations. Where it's Yosef ben Shimon ben Levi and one's Yosef ben Shimon ben Aaron. But the receipt didn't say the 3rd generation. So that's where the doubt creeps in. Al Kapanim, but over here, we're talking about where it's in the possession of the lender, and we see that it's kosher. So that seems to contradict Rav. We see that if a guy finds a receipt in his possession, we see that it is valid. Rav says it's possible. Says the Gemara, that's not difficult. That's Kedama Rav Safra. This is what we quoted, though. We said from Rav Safra, this is what Rav Safra said is teaching. Shenimtza ben shtar is keduin. I mean, actually, it's the next teaching, but it's also quoting it again. Just like Rav Safra says that you find it amongst the shredded documents. It's also where the document was found, bein shtar is kruin amongst the shredded documents, and therefore each one could say, that was my shtar that was obviously paid up with the shredded documents, and again, therefore you can't collect from either one of them. The Gemara says, Tashma, try to bring another raya from Mishnah Masechta Shavuos and Daf Memhei Amud Aleph. When orphans are trying to collect from orphans, the halacha is that really neither one of them know what's going on. They can only collect with an oath. Now the question is, what oath do they say? They don't know what's going on. So says the Mishnah, they have to make a shvur shleipakadnu abba. They swear that our father did not command us when he was dying. And our father did not tell us beforehand. And neither did we find amongst the documents of our father. We don't know, he never told us, we didn't find that it's paid up, and therefore then they could collect. Now, if it sounds like, but if they would find a simfon, if they would find amongst his writings that it was paid up, we would rely on it, and it would be kosher, and we could say it's paid up. Again, that refutes Rav. Says the Gemara, Rav Safra, this was what Rav Safra had his teaching. No, here it's different, because it was found amongst his shredded documents. When you find the receipt amongst the shredded documents, or the document amongst the shredded documents, whichever Pshat and Rashi go with, that's an indicator that it was paid up. But in general, that wouldn't necessarily be considered as an indicator. Someone says, okay, I'll try to bring another ayat, Toshima. Simfon sheyesh of Adam. If you have a receipt that has witnesses, yiskayim b'chesamav. So you verify it with its signature. So Rashi, the bottom Rashi explains what the Gemara is assuming is that if the lender says, I wasn't paid up, and you should know because I never gave it to you, so the halacha is yiskayim b'chesamav, meaning if the signatories testify that they signed, then the lender is not believed, which is not like Rav. But as long as it's not Makuyim, then he's believed. Because who's producing it? The Malva. And the Malva is saying that it's possible. But one thing you see is that, but when it's Yiskayim B'chesamav, that then it's going to be able to be collected. So Amy says the Gemara, no, say Yiskayim Mechesamav. What does that mean? As the Gemara continues the top of Chafal from Aleph, we verified from the signatories that is Dishalin Lusahadi. We asked the witnesses if they saw the payment. If it's paid or not. And if not, the lender is believed to say that it was not written and only just to be prepared when he's going to be paid, and therefore actually it would be possible, and therefore he is believed like Rav. So it's no raya. So says, okay, Tashma's trying to bring another raya. The Brisa says, Simfin Shrish Laba Edim Kosher. It says, again, that if you have a receipt that has witnesses, it's kosher. So it's no, my Edim. What does it mean? Edim, it means Eidei Kiyum, which, as Rashi explains, that they wrote a handpick. Oh, if you wrote a handpick, the courts are not makayim something unless it would actually be paid. So if it has a court certification, then we know it's paid, and then we're not going to say that maybe he wrote it just in case it's going to be paid, and then therefore that's when we're going to presume that it was paid. And the Gemara says, it's actually logical like that, and therefore it's not a contradiction to Rav, Megatani Seifa. Because the Seifa that Bryce says, V'she'enu lav edim pasul, if it doesn't have edim, it's going to be pasul. Says Gemara, Ma einu lav edim. What does it mean there's no witnesses? If it means there's no edim at all, remember the puzzle? You have to say it's puzzle. Of course it's puzzle. It's not a document without edim. Ilav edikim rather means to say without edim that are mekayim with a handpick. That's what say it's going to be puzzle. And again, that actually would be exact like Rav, that even though it's in his possession, but unless we have a certification, we don't presume that it was paid up yet. Gemara just goes back Gufa to quote the whole teaching of the Brisa. The Brisa said, Simfin Sheshlav Edim. If there's a receipt, as we explained, as Rashi says, that we're talking about Eidei Kiyum, based on the second Brisa, if you have a receipt that has 8 witnesses that verified it, so like we said, Yiskayim B'chesamav, that you validated with its signatures, that is, even if the lender is producing it, is going to be kosher. And you'll have Edim, like we said, if it doesn't have Eidei Kiyum, but of course there are witnesses signed on it, so it depends. If it's V'yetzu Mitachas Yidei Shlish, if it's in the third party's possession, so it's not the borrower that has it, it's not the lender who has it, it's a third party. Or another case, that is, this receipt is actually on the loan document itself. After the signature is on the loan, on the bottom of that, it says that it was paid up. Oh, then kosher, then this receipt is going to be valid. So the Gemara explains, when it's produced by a third party, the reason why it's going to be kosher is the lender trusted the third party, where obviously that the only one who wrote the receipt was the lender, and he gave it over to a third party. So like Rabbeinu Chananel says over here, the third party saying that yes, that the borrower paid up the lender, and it's a migui, because since if the shlish wanted to give it to the borrower, he could give it because he trusted him. When he says he paid up, he's also believed. And the last case of Yitzlach Achit Mishtaris Nami, when the receipt is on the bottom of the signatures of the loan document itself, you'll have the priya. If it wasn't yet paid up, the lender would not ruin his document by having on the document itself. He say, oh, just in case, you wouldn't do it on the loan document itself to have the shayver, the receipt, the simfon. Obviously, if it is there, it must have been already paid up. We'll turn to the first parak in Mesechta Bava Metzia Daf, which again spoke about the halachas of Metzias, which then continue into the next parak of Elam Metzias. Thank you for any time for hosting us.